Hi, I'm Dr. Sean Oser, and as an associate professor in the Department of Family Medicine at the University of Colorado School of Medicine, I'm both a researcher and a practicing family physician, and I'm glad that you're watching today to discuss time and range, more green, less red. So what's a quick strategy to get high-yield information from a CGM device and that resonates with patients? One strategy that I find quick and which patients really grasp right away and seem motivated to see movement on is more green, less red. What does that mean? There's broad international consensus on what the targets should be for glucose levels and times spent in specific glucose ranges. For most people with diabetes, the goal is to spend more than 70% of time in the target range, which for most people is 70 to 180 milligrams per deciliter. This is the time and range, shown here in green, just like the continuous glucose monitor systems show on their summary reports, and like it's presented on the standardized report called the Ambulatory Glucose Profile, or AGP. But the goal should be more green here, and likewise, the red zone down at the bottom is time below range, with actually two low ranges down there in different shades of red. One involving all of the time spent with a glucose less than 70 milligrams per deciliter, and the other showing the amount of time with a glucose less than 54 milligrams per deciliter. So we want to see less red here, or less time with low glucose levels in the hypoglycemia range. I've found that presenting this to patients as more green, less red is something we can all visualize together and work toward together. Where do I focus first when approaching CGM data with patients? I always like to focus on low glucose or hypoglycemia first. Hypoglycemia can be dangerous in the short term, with potentially impaired judgment, impaired coordination, or even loss of consciousness or worse. So if we focus on low glucose first, we can address the rest with a little less urgency. This is why I always look first to the red area here on the CGM summary report. So for this patient's summary data here on the left side of the screen, they're spending a total of 10% of time with low glucose below 70. And remember, we want that to be less than 4%. And their time with very low glucose is 6%, which we want to be less than 1%. So this is someone who's experiencing quite a lot of time in hypoglycemia, and we want to see them with more green and definitely with less red. Contrast that with this patient, where the display looks just a little different, but in this case is taken from a patient's smartphone app showing their CGM summary data right on their own device in the same format that we see from the other patient who downloaded it at their doctor's office. This patient on the right has just 1% time in the low range and less than 1% in the very low range, where I always look first. And then I look at the green and see that their 83% time in range meets the recommended target of greater than 70%. So we can see here exactly what is meant by more green, less red. How can I compare time and range data to A1C? Well, there's been some really great work by a couple of different research groups showing that time and range correlates pretty well with A1C. For starters, 70% time and range correlates quite nicely with an A1C level of 7.0%. And since the recommended A1C target for most people with diabetes is less than 7%, that's why we have a time and range target of greater than 70%. To go just a bit further, every 10% increase in time and range corresponds to a decrease in A1C of about 0.5%. So for someone whose time and range is 60%, or 10% below the threshold of 70%, we can predict that their A1C would correspond to about 7.5%, pretty close to the 7.4% shown in this table. Or for someone with time and range of 50%, we'd expect their A1C to be around 8% based on that time and range, which is again pretty close to the 7.9% shown here in the table. So once more, we see that as time and range gets higher, more green in the stacked bar charts we've been looking at, we see lower A1C levels reaching the recommended targets. Thanks very much for watching, and hopefully this will be helpful as you work with your patients to maximize their time and range. For more information, visit the American Diabetes Association's Time and Range website at professional.diabetes.org/time and range.